In this video, we'll be covering the data design recipe. So similar to the function design recipe, we use the data design recipe whenever we're defining a new data type. So in this video, I'll be defining a new data type called species. And the first step is the data definition. So this is where we lay out what the data is and what it represents. So I'll say a species, let's say a species is one of, we list out the different types of species. So let's take an example from Star Trek. Let's do Vulcan. Let's do a human and maybe a hybrid. So these are the possible values for our species. And now we have a name for our data. The next step is we provide an interpretation. What does our data represent? And in this case, I'm going to say that our data represents a species in the star universe. So that provides a good description of our data. We want some examples now. So in this case, I'll provide an example for each one of our possible values. So Vulcan we'll define as the string Vulcan. Species human we'll define as the string human. So if you see, I'm copying the type, the case, and everything from my data definition to create my examples. And finally, we'll do a hybrid species. And so in this case, I've created all three for each of my three values, but you don't necessarily have to create all of your values. If you have like many more values, then you don't necessarily have to create examples for all of them. Finally, the last step is to create the template, and this kind of shows what a function using this data would look like. So let's call it something like species temp. We take in a species, that's what that S represents, and we do 3 dots here to represent that we could write some code. We don't know what code we want to write in the template yet. Then we want to use, in this case, a conditional branch because we want to figure out which one of the species is this argument S. So to do so, we create 3 branches of con. We use string equals huh. We test if it's species Vulcan, and if it is, then we want to run some code. Then we can test if it's species human. If it is, we can run some code. Finally, we test if it's the hybrid species. And if so, we want to run a separate set of code. All of that is the template. So now if we wanted to write a function using this new data definition, we could, for example, in the signature, we'd have some function, takes in a species, and produces anything. Maybe it's a number, maybe it's a string, or it could even be another species. We'll look at an example of this in a future video.